Welcome everybody to another episode of my podcast, and like all the other episodes of my podcast, I'm always delighted to have my guest on, and today is no different. And today is going to be a good one. They're all good, but I'm particularly interested in this from a data perspective. So I'd like to welcome Dr Jillian Ney to the show. Jillian, hello.
Hello, thank you very much for having me along.
That's all right. The power of social media brought us together, as does usually with most of my guests. And I'm going to read off Jillian's headline here on LinkedIn. UK's first Doctor of Social Intelligence and Conversational Data, I believe. Data IQ 100 Influencer 2021. And talks about all things basically social listening, which I'm a huge fan of, especially where the world is going around kind of data and data analytics and how we use all of this. So, without further ado, Jillian, who, what, why, when, where, why, and then let's see what rabbit hole this takes us down today.
Yes, you've got me a bit of a cringe moment there, Alexander, when you read that LinkedIn headline. Need to go back and change that now. So stay tuned, everyone. It will be changed within, probably by the time you hear this.
So what's your story? Yeah.
What's my story? My story was I never knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. And there was a series of, they're not unfortunate events, they're very, very fortunate events, but there's a series of fortunate events that led me to be where I was today. The first was really that I did not have a clue what I wanted to do when I was finishing my undergrad degree. And I was very lucky in the fact that I was going to be the first person in 9 years to graduate with a joint first in my university, within the degree subjects that I did. So it was pretty unheard of. And they invited me to come back and to see if I wanted to do a PhD. And I thought, do you know what? There's another 3 years. I can style this out. I can do 3 years. I can find something. But then it turned, oh gosh, it was a lot. First of all, I had to find a subject that I wanted to study. And when I say I didn't know what I wanted to do, I wasn't really majorly interested in lots of different things. So they set me a task and sent me off to go and tell them what was going to be big in the next 5 to 10 years. And then we would pick from that on what I wanted to do. So I came back with two things that I was pretty interested in, which was social media, but actually from a data perspective rather than from a communications perspective. And the other one, my degree was in hospitality management, tourism and marketing. The other one was going to be the boom of location-based tourism from films and television and things like that. So both have pretty much come true. So I'm winning at that. And really after finding social data, there's never been anything else since. It's just been, it's my passion. It's my love. Some people don't like it, but when you start to treat it in the right way and stop applying old thinking into this new area, then you can come on leaps and bounds, which I'm really excited to speak about today.
Well, I already like the stop applying old thinking to new data, whatever you just said. It's been a long weekend. So,
yes.
Social listening. There's always been kind of social listening. There's been a lot of conversation out there at the moment around all of this. But for me, I guess social listening was or has been something which is kind of in the realms of the PR team initially, where they have social listening tools to kind of make sure that the brand of the name is not being, having mud slung at it. It's not being caught up in things that it shouldn't necessarily be part of. But we've come obviously a hell of a long way since all of that. And to your point around, data is boring, right? That's why nobody really wants to get into it, because there's lots and lots of spreadsheets and you need to look at lots and lots of different things. But when you get into it, you can get some really, really interesting insights. So for you today, here we are, September 2022. What is social listening in terms of how you would describe it? Or what has it become? Maybe it's not social listening at all we should be thinking about.
I know that we're going to be doing this in audio, but can I pull something up? And this is the first time I'm actually showing this to anybody outside of the organisation. So it'll help me talk around it. You won't be able to see it, but in fact, I'll send you, Alexander, I'll send you over a copy so you can publish alongside and notes and things like that. If you give me, because this is a topic that comes up a lot. What is this? And you're right, and probably that the social listening tools and departments may be languishing in PR and comms and lots of many organizations. And we find that a lot because one, for the first reason, there's that organizations start to take this seriously after they've gone through a major incident or crisis. So therefore, it then sits within that communications team, or it's been part of social media or part of something else. So it's sitting within some of those teams and it's very narrowly focused, but there's more to the data. And it's just when someone tells you that there's more and shows you how to do that, then you realize actually this $100,000 a year I'm spending on this technology isn't just telling me if my brand awareness is poor or good, or what the competitive landscape looks like in terms of how they're playing in social media. It can actually tell me real things. But we've got a bit of a problem in the fact that because many departments can then access that data, they're looking at it in different ways. Nobody speaks each other's language, and we're all kind of missing where each other is, and what's possible with social listening. So after many years, more years than I care to remember, this is what I finally come to. So on the screen here is a Venn diagram, and it's very, very simple. So this goes back to the fact that when we've got all of these people who say they're doing social listening, but they're actually doing something very different in all of these different teams and departments across the organization. The most common view on social listening really is this real-time analysis part. So this is the bit, you need to know what your brand is being said about when you're not in the room, or you need to have a bit. So it's really risk, reputation, and performance. So kind of campaign performance and all of that kind of stuff. Whenever we speak to people, 99% of the time, that's where they're playing, and maybe at the peripheries of some of these other bubbles within my Venn diagram here. The area where I come from, though, is actually very different because I've come from that academic environment. I've come from that research environment. I'm not a data scientist. So that's like when you were mentioning about stats and spreadsheets and things like that. I find the data analysis part of it very interesting because we're working with language and we get to understand people's story. So I'm in this insights part here. And if you're in here, it's more likely that you've come from a qualitative background and you start to use all of the toolkits and frameworks and everything where people have been analysing language for many, 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 many years. So there's a real rich history there. Then we've got this other newer area that's coming into fruition, which they're calling decision intelligence. And it very much comes from a data science background. And interestingly, what happens is that this real-time analysis tends to concentrate more on social media and other online sources. But when you start to get into the other two bubbles, there's a lot more context needs to be driven because you've probably got a business question or a problem it is that you're trying to solve with analysing that data. So you start to come in and you use additional data sources and you've got different models and frameworks. You're not being led by the technology. It's like, I know what question I need to answer. I know what data sources are important to me. And this is how I'm going to do it because we've got a proven framework here to do it. And that's kind of, so most people sit in the real-time analysis part of it. You can see over it all. But for me, I'm probably more in that insight bubble.
So for those that listen, we've got the Venn diagram, the real-time analysis, kind of one bubble, insights another bubble, decision intelligence another bubble. So vision those three bubbles come together. We'll come to decision intelligence in a minute. It's now the second time I've heard this phrase, another podcast I was talking about. And then we have the overlaps between real-time analysis and insights is contextual and qualitative. The overlaps between decision intelligence and insights is structured and immersive. The overlap between real-time analysis is quantified and data science led. And the nirvana, I guess, is the middle of the Venn diagram where everything is coming together, and that is always on scaled immersion. So that's good. I think it's really awesome here because actually the real-time analysis is the bit that I always want to think on. But having kind of worked with one of my colleagues in this space, there's so much more to it that you can be bringing to the party around the data, but also thinking of the point that you said, Jillian, around the question.
Yes. This question that matters most, really. Yeah. And I don't know, it's difficult in a way because because this really started off as a technological challenge. Suddenly we were able to analyze all of this and everybody's like, oh, this is going to be great. And I think, well, I'm a little bit cynical and it maybe didn't quite happen this way, but it became, okay, so what is it that we're going to be doing with this? How do we sell it to these people? It's almost like we created a problem and then offered a solution to a problem that nobody knew they had. And you kind of feel that in the development of the social listening industry, but there's pockets of activity that's happening in a development at pace now where we're starting to overcome that kind of initial challenge. You need to have this because you need to know what people are saying about you, but nobody really knew how to get the insight out of it.
Yeah. So if and I'm going to brief broad brushstroke in terms of my statements, and this is through a B2B lens, not through a B2C B2C lens, is that business to business marketing teams, social media teams, wherever this fits, I feel are still quite behind the curve in actually looking at this in the round in the way that you described it with that Venn diagram, over and above it just being making sure no one's kind of saying naughty things about us. So why should anybody be thinking about this? And follow-up question, should this actually be kind of a board level agenda question around what an organisation could be doing with the art of the possible in all of this?
So to answer the last question first, okay. I would say that, yeah, it should start to come in at a board level decision. And I'm not talking about social listening. I'm talking more about data governance and things like that. These are conversations that are being had just now. And I often think that social data or internet data in general is a bit of a black sheep of the family. We don't want that. It's too unstructured. It's people just talking about their dinners or whatever it is, or complaining on Twitter. This is another thing that we get told a lot. Twitter's just full of complaints. And actually, when you start to look at it properly, it's not. And in some circumstances, those complaints can tell you what you need to do next. Or you can stop the complaints from happening, which is fantastic news. So it depends upon the lens you want to put on it. So I would say, yeah, it needs to start being taken a bit more seriously. But until we as an industry can come together and actually show the impact that a lot of this can have, I don't know if it's going to be taken that seriously. And that's something that we're trying to work on. But it's a bit like pushing a boulder up a hill because a lot of people can't actually talk about the projects that they work on, or there's attribution for social data and all of these other things, and nobody quite knows how to put what value in what. But there's certain things in smaller projects that you can start to work on that actually begin to build trust within the organisation that can then help you get to those larger conversations. And we've got loads of people that we work with at the Social Intelligence Lab on that journey. And it's a lot of the biggest challenge for them is getting outside of that comms department, because social data is expensive and everybody thinks it's free, and it's totally not. It is expensive. Most of our enterprise organizations are paying over $100,000 a year. Within there, they're paying for multiple tools, on average about 3. They've maxed probably out their data allowance for being within that one department. So in order for them to grow in these other departments, they need investment from them to be able to buy more data to answer their questions properly. So loads of challenges. In terms of it being a B2B versus B2C, you're right. Most of the work, and you publish case studies and things like that, 90% of them are B2C.
Yeah.
And I think there's one reason for that though, and that's been because it was sold as you need to know what people are speaking about you when you're not in the room. And people talk about brands online, and they share branded logos and things like that. But actually, the organisation, while that is good in a way for you not to understand that, that's not where the magic happens with all of this data. The magic happens when you start to go into categories and industries and look at society in general and how people talk and converse about various different subjects. And I think that this is where, if our B2B people can start to have a more serious look at that and what's actually being spoken about, then you can actually leapfrog where the B2C crowd are just now, just by looking at the data in the right way.
And again, I guess it was interesting you talk about the perception of social media just more broadly, kind of in a B2B or in the boardroom. It's It's people complaining on Twitter. It's people talking about Andrew Tate getting cancelled. It's people talking about what their dog had for breakfast and so on and so forth. And even there was a piece, I think, in the New York Times, suddenly my newsfeed was yesterday with an author who's talked about has LinkedIn become a place of oversharing and we're over kind of sharing too much, and is it become business Facebook? But it's, if you start to scratch beneath the surface to actually go and find the conversation that you want to kind of go and find versus just accept what you see in front of you. Even platforms like LinkedIn can bear incredible fruit. But I want to pick up on the point you made around getting the trust from within the business that this actually works. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned attribution,
yeah. which
in itself is, is a debate in its own right. So whether it's B2C or B2B, I think my view of the argument still remains the same. What have you seen? How has this been successfully done, even on a small level, for listeners that are thinking, okay, well, I actually want to start taking this conversation to the right people beyond the comms department, but how do you get them on that journey of trust and understanding that if we take this seriously, and yes, it costs money, right? But actually that investment could equal XYZ in the future?
Yeah, so at the Social Intelligence Lab, we're a community for people who work with social data. So we get to speak, and it's a really privileged place to be, actually, because we get to speak to all different types of people from all different sizes of organisation and every single industry and every geography on the planet. So we've got a lot of understanding in terms of what's worked and what's not worked for other people. Mm-hmm. And there's always continually this education piece. And some people have had success with posting out a regular, sometimes a daily newsletter on what's been happening within social media and all of that kind of stuff. And that goes away to awareness building, but it's still probably quite a long ways away from someone who's making a decision, I don't know, about innovation topics or about whatever it is. They need to have more context. And you're not going to get that until you go and speak to that person and that team and that department. Sometimes you might have to have a little pilot. You've just done something off your own back, off your own steam. Here's something that I found. I think you might find that interesting. What's happening within your work? What is it that you're trying to answer? Where do you need to know? Because I think more of this is about consumer behaviour. So what behavioural trends, what is it that you need to know about what's happening in the world, in popular culture, to be able to make that decision? And sometimes a lot of it's how people associate different items in their head, or what the purchase journey looks like, or what's people's hidden motivations and things. And all of those things are hiding in social data. You just need to know how to look for them properly. And it's about building really that relationship and really understanding what they're trying to use, what they're trying to answer, and not just providing them with, this is one of my biggest bugbears of the industry, we can't answer that. But what we can do is do this workaround, and you do all of these three things here, and you get to this other completely different thing that's completely meaningless for the question it is that you're trying to answer. Don't do that. Figure out a way that you can help them be able to answer that question. And it might be a little bit of that question, and they may need to use a load of other stuff, but you need to show where the strengths and the weaknesses are and be really clear about what the caveats are and where the weaknesses are, or they're not going to take you seriously.
I think it's so true around that in terms of kind of the no buts, and then you get something which is not relevant, and then you've lost them because that has absolutely no bearing in terms of what we have. Part of sometimes what I do when I'm working with especially sales teams, the whole sales and marketing conundrum in terms of sales and marketing don't work with each other in a B2B context, or even speaking with organisations where they have kind of these business functions doing this, but they're so far removed from the category that the category managers on the ground, as it were, go, well, we don't get anything from them at all, because what they give us is just so 1,000 miles up in the air versus what's happening for me right here, right now in this particular thing. There's that kind of big old disconnect. Is part of what I suggest is, if I'm a sales leader, for example, go to your marketing functions and go, give me all of your data. I want it all. I want everything that you possibly have. And then my view is that they should be able to spot some trends awesome anomalies, awesome interesting. So I had a call, podcast publishing today actually around intent data, and Dr. Kerry Cunningham, and he was saying, go to your marketing teams, for example, and if you see 10 of the same person, 10 people from the same company downloading something from your website, don't treat those as individuals, treat them as a collective. Because if 10 people are doing something, then that should signal something rather than being treated as a collective. And I would suggest the same with, but if you have any kind of social media listening tool, and the chances are your comms department probably does, is go and ask them to look at it, and rather than plug in the brand name, let's say you sell CRM systems, for example, we'll go and ask them to listen around what's the conversation around CRM, high level, and then start to poke a little bit further and go, oh, that's interesting. We're seeing a hotspot of conversation around CRM over in that geography. Do we have a sales rep there? Will we do in that space? Going to talk to marketing functions? Do we need to create some more local kind of marketing collateral around there? It's just taking that step back. And to your earlier point around old processes, new technology being forced into old processes, which I'm hearing more and more and more. So you invest in this, £100,000, is that what you were saying, $100,000 that people are investing in this stuff and probably not really scratching the surface of what it can do if they knew what questions to ask.
And I think that's the biggest crux of it, because a lot of the time, going back to that real-time analysis thing, everybody assumes that you need to have it in and it needs to be a longitudinal thing. It needs to be constantly running and pinging alerts off all of the different places. No, it doesn't. There's I think it's like 80-20. So 80% of people's projects are probably these small one-off projects where they're doing a deep dive on something, and 20% of some of these long-term longitudinal things. So it's come with a problem. Think about what it is that you want to know about. It is a research source at the end of the day. So if your organization believes in research and it believes that the new term seems to be, it's been floating about a lot more, I've noticed recently, human truths, you want to get to that human truth, then this is a great way to be able to do that. And if you're already investing there in other forms of research, then it doesn't take that much to start to move out into this area when you've got the right mindset for it.
I think that's a really interesting angle to look at it in terms of using them, because most organisations on the planet will say, we're research-led and we're insight-led and we pay, maybe we have a team of research analysts that create all this that I'm doing inverted commas on thought leadership, which then never sees the light of day or sees the light of day kind of once in a blue moon. So come at it through that research lens. Even give your research analysts kind of access to the technology if you've got it, and let them kind of think about the sort of questions that they are trying to answer, and then you just have another source of data. And to your point, this can't just actually be looked through the lens of social media data. You're going to have to go and invest and find third-party data providers that maybe you think initially have no relevance to what you do. But if you start to layer all those different kind of data points on top of each other, and then this comes to this piece around decision intelligence in your kind of Venn diagram. And this goes back to, I can never ever remember the author of the article, even though I always cite it back in 2017. But it's a lady she was LinkedIn, she's now at Microsoft, and again, I should be able to remember her name, but she tweeted back in 2017 that was cited as, if you, as a marketing exec, if you go into a data-led board meeting or something, or a boardroom that thinks through data, and you start your sentence with "I think" versus "I know," you may well be asked to leave the room. This is back in 2017. This blog article was written. It's around, do you need a data scientist in your team? And the view back then was no, but you need to have people that can start to think that way. And I think it's fascinating that decision intelligence, now you've mentioned it, another guest of mine, Greg Smith, mentioned it, because you have the real-time piece, you have the insights bit, but do you feel that you do need somebody that is able to bring that decision intelligence skill set and lens to it, to be able to...
Depends on what you want to do, really. because I think that some of them have similar use cases, and some of them they're a little bit more far apart. And it depends, and I don't know. It's a really difficult one to answer because it depends upon the organisation as well, and where it is that they're investing their time and their money. So it might not be that they have the skills within the real-time analysis or the insight, but we've got a lot of data scientists there, which then kind of changes where it is that you need to play with it, or where you're playing within that Venn diagram. I would have to say as well, though, probably most of the data scientists don't really rate social data, and you need to come over that hurdle.
So what use cases have you, so in the community that's I'll put all the links down here in terms of the chat, and of those listening will be in the body of the podcast text, but big or small, what use cases have you seen where an organisation has thought differently, they've been more open about looking at this through a different lens? What use cases have you seen where they've done this and then an output or an outcome has happened because of it?
I think that's a hard question this is a hard question to answer, because you get all of these use cases and case studies, and you're trying to scratch under the surface about what actually happened, and did it happen the way that you say it happened? Because a lot of the time it probably didn't. But it's that's the power of a case study, I guess. Glossed over some of the hard stuff. I would say, if we go back to the Venn diagram a second, and I think it's maybe easier to kind of talk about that. So within the real-time analysis piece, we've got risk, reputation, and performance. And so feels a bit more tactical. It feels a bit more numerical driven a lot of the time.
Yep.
You want to be able to quantify what that looks like. And there's probably alerts and things like that pinging off. So we see a lot of people, I'm not going to say stuck, because one is not really better than the other. It just depends on what you want to do. But we see a lot of people within there. Within the insight sphere, I would say that we're then starting to have a look at kind of what's happening within culture, and how culture is shaping people, and how behaviours are changing and things like that. So if you want to know how people feel, I don't know, it was a Queen's funeral yesterday. If you want to know how people felt about that, then that's the kind of space that you're going to play within there. Within the decision intelligence, I think it speaks to oftentimes, and there's various different points in it, but if I think about that part of it, it speaks to more operations and manufacturing and different things like that. And that's where I see those use cases. But the interesting thing is that the people who work within there would never in a million years say that they do social listening. And it's the same kind of within the insights part of it, is maybe not so much within the insights, but these people do not think that they do social listening. But if you analyze any kind of data that's been taken from the internet, you're doing social listening. So it's just different, is what I'm trying to say in a really long-winded way.
No, and I think it also highlights how kind of nascent we are in this journey, because there are different moving parts to it, different skill sets that are required. But it comes full circle back to the question, and I would manage to segue Sales Navigator into this, which is LinkedIn's premium sales tool. So it's just a way to surface data on LinkedIn through a different way. If you don't know what question you're asking it, then you've got nowhere to start. And I guess it's then helping people. I'm trying to simplify this for my simple mind, but also not saying my audience is simple, far from it, but sometimes simplifying things around what's the outcome you're trying to achieve. If you could answer this one question, what would that be? Would it be really, really helpful? And then start to work backwards through, well, how might we then start to answer that? But have an open mind. Have an open mind about where, back to your point around this being a research opportunity, look at it purely as that, and then just have a think about, well, where might we find information, but have an open mind about where that information may be hidden that you haven't necessarily given consideration for to do that. So do you, I'm making an assumption here, I'm guessing you do need some kind of technology to do this. You can't manually go into, let's say, Twitter, as an example, Facebook, and start to listen. I'm doing inverted comments. There has to be some.
This is going to be an unpopular opinion. So if you're in a very small organization and you do not have the money, because a lot of the licenses for these technologies are billed on an annual basis. So you like 100 over 100K is like the kind of top end of the scale. If you're a smaller company, you're probably not going to spend that, but they may ask from £10,000 upwards from you, depending on which provider it is. I would say if you're looking at this, you don't need to have that technology if you know the data source where you want to use. So you could use advanced Google search to be able to go and to search with your keywords and things like that, uses Boolean logic too, which is how we search within these technologies. And I have to say, when I started doing this, there was no technology. I had to do it by hand. So I've been used to doing it by hand. It takes a while, but because you have to search and read everything, you actually get a greater appreciation for what's happening. Because I think in a lot of the technology, when we're using it, you kind of forget that it's been made by a human, it's about a human, and we're trying to figure out a human problem because it's reduced down to being a data point. So we really dehumanize it in this other way where you're doing it and you're learning and you're reading and working out what's going on here. It can actually give you a greater appreciation for what the value of this is. And then you can start to build and plug in a little bit of more of the technological solutions, a little bit more potentially of automation, depending on what it is that you're trying to do. But you do not need to start there. My thing with smaller companies is go and read the consumer reviews, not just about your brand, but about all of your competitors' brands, and work out, you can really find really, really simply and quickly what motivates someone to buy the product or the service, what the decision-making heuristics are. So we've got all of these people, and product-led marketing's come a huge wave again, but it's not every single one of the attributes about your product that makes somebody go and buy it. There's probably about 3 really important ones. Consumer reviews will tell you what these 3 really important things are, and actually potentially some things that you might not have considered as well. And go and just start to read that. And then that'll give you a bit of an appreciation for what can actually happen here and how that can, this is a marketing use case, it's how that can then help frame what that communication needs to look like. One of the examples that's off the top of my head as we're talking, I did a study on, those mattresses in a box that you get. So they come rolled up and then you open them out and things like that. So I did a study on this to figure out what was motivating people to buy them. And if actually, because we found that in a lot of the framing of their advertising and things like that, it was actually more geared towards attracting investors than what it was attracting customers, but just within some of the things that they were saying. Yep. And then when we went and did this, we were then able to do a comparison. But people wouldn't. One of the things that put people off buying those mattresses is that lots of people have had an experience with a foam mattress before. Apparently they smell like fish and they get really, really hot. So then when we started to go back through another level and have a look at these advertisements, we could actually see the words cool. We could see fans and things like that. So there was a lot of, they were trying to kind of overcome some of that association and things. So there's little things that you can do that don't take that long, but can actually have a serious impact on how it is that you can communicate with your audience.
God forbid make everything client-centric and consumer-centric that every organisation on the planet claims it does, especially in the B2B space. And I sound like a stock record on this, but even simple things like getting sales reps just to pick up the phone to their top 10 customers and go, why did you buy us?
Yeah.
And actually use it as part of your marketing messaging or this and that. And, those certainly SaaSquad, G2 Crowd, and there are others where they've got loads and loads of customer reviews out there. And even instantly, it's amazing how organizations don't realize that even on Google, if you Google your address on Google Maps, people will leave customer reviews about reception or this, or, complain about somebody. There's, the 2-star or 1-star rating. Yes, it might be 2 or 3 reviews, but it gives you some kind of data point. And there you go. I hadn't even considered that you might use something like advanced Google search to start to give you snippets of data and insight, which then to your point, you mentioned earlier, little kind of proof points or even little highlights to go and then go, I did this, and this, and this is what I found. Imagine if we could expand this a little bit further. If you give me a bit of investment, we might be able to do this. Shorten sales cycles, increase return on investment from marketing. I mean, basically everything is like this. Is it going to save you time and money, or is it going to create, a better sales opportunities and sales pipelines. And I feel if you can answer one of those three questions with some data and some proof now, that most organizations would then be prepared to take most, if you find forward-thinking individuals, so Harold Dweck's growth mindset, fixed mindset, find a growth mindset is that a word? Individual.
It is now.
It is now, exactly, to go and kind of work through this and work with this. I'm going to go with this question. Forgive me because I've given you no time to think about it. Maybe you have thought about it. But Web3 and the metaverse, where do you see this world of kind of listening to kind of conversation going in the world of Web3 and metaverse? Because Starbucks have just launched their, I think Odyssey, it's called their Web3 based community platform. With, kudos to them, didn't mention crypto or NFTs anywhere in terms of their marketing, but it's gaining momentum, right? This kind of decentralized world that we're moving into allegedly. So where are organizations? Where's this all going to fit?
So it's going to be an uphill struggle for people in the start. So because of social listening and everything else, we've been used to analysing text-based data. Mm-hmm. And even in the ones where we see that they're analysing a bit of video, they transcribe that video into text-based data so you can then analyse it, or the tools or the machine learning or whatever it is that you've got. Suddenly, we're completely changing, and these experiences are going to be more immersive. So my challenge with everybody that's saying that they're doing video analysis, they're literally only analysing what people are saying. They're not having a look to see what's in your background, what's happening kind of at different times when things come in and out. And so we go more, if we take it back in, we go for more ethnographic. So it's like sitting and being immersed within what's happening within that community. Yeah. What do the rituals look like? What's actually happening? Is there specific colours? All of these different things. So it requires a slightly different skill set. Now, I'm not saying that like analysing the text-based part of it's not going to get you something. It will, but we're going to hit a point in time where there needs to be a softer skill set that comes in to be able to really understand about what's happening within these places.
Yeah, the whole non-verbal cues piece is an interesting thing in terms of I'm just going to sit by the sidelines and just watch how this all.
It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be awful, but it's
going to be an NFT waffle somewhere. So, if anybody is thinking about this. Well, start again, Alexander. With regards to my audience, and if they're listening to this, they think they may not even be in the comms department, they may not be even anything to do with social listening, but they're going, hang on a second, maybe we've got some of this technology. Maybe you do have the technology. What would be your kind of top tips or top three things, or one, or whatever it is, to go back into your business and start going, I want to think differently about this. I just heard this brilliant podcast by Dr Jillian Ney. Where do we start?
Where do you start? So start with you and what it is that you're doing in your work currently. What's the things that you need to confirm? If you're in sales, what's the things that's happening in your category? Do not think about your brand. Think about everything beyond the brand. Right. So what's happening in the world out there? It's the thing. When you're working with brands, the brand's the center of the universe for the brand, but that's not where the magic happens. It happens when you start to look beyond the brand. Mm-hmm. So what is it that you're trying to achieve? Where do you think that you need some more information about what's happening in the world? And then start from there and go and speak to the social listening team. Figure out if there is a team. If you have a technology yourself, mm-hmm. The technology, if you look at it for the first time, you're going to see lots of various different dashboards and various different charts, and it's going to seem really intimidating, and you're going to be like, Jillian, you lied to me. There is no insight in here for what I need to do. But you actually need to start to analyze and segment the data for the question that you have to answer. So yeah, it's when you look at it, you're going to go, no, thank you, but you persevere with it and think about how it is that what it is that you're looking for a little bit, and that will help you. So go and figure out if you have it. figure out what you're going to need to have a look to see if they've got any capacity in terms of data volume, because a lot of it's done on volume or number of searches and things like that. If they're able to do that, and work with them to be able to set this up for you to be able to answer those questions it is that you have. So you could start broad and try to understand about what you were saying, what's happening within the world of CRM, and you'll get some topics that people are speaking about. You'll be able to figure out really easily what articles are being shared and things like that. But you need to go a bit deeper. Mm-hmm. If you're a salesperson, you want to know what motivates someone to purchase that product. You want to know what challenges it is that they're facing. So then you can work out how it is that you're going to help be able to solve those challenges. And that information and insight is there. It's just a little bit more difficult to get, and you can't really get that through a bar graph or a line chart or whatever it is. You need to start looking at the data at that, properly reading it at that point.
And of course, depending on that, they can come and talk to you, I guess.
Yeah, I come and speak to us. So we do. I'm not going to run your project for you, but I can guide you. That's what the Social Intelligence Lab is set up to do. So our mission is to advance the value of social and internet data in decision making, and insights in decision making. So if you want to get started, we've got various different ways in which we can kind of help kickstart that for you. So please do get back in touch with me.
Perfect. And if they want to do that, the best place for me to point them to is your LinkedIn profile to start with, Ted, or a website, or both.
Yeah, my LinkedIn profile. So it's Dr Jillian Ney, and our website is thesilab.com.
Which I will put in the chat down there, or chat up here, or somewhere around here.
Somewhere.
It'll be in the body of the podcast you're listening to as well. But if you're not thinking about this, I strongly recommend you go and start scratching the surface. It's a brave new world there, but there's some fascinating things that you can glean out. Dr. Jillian, it's been absolutely wonderful having you on as a guest today. Thank you so much for your insight.
Cool. I enjoyed that.
Good. And thank you for sharing with the Venn diagram. First time the world's ever seen it. Also put the imagery. The image will be in the podcast as well. Don't worry, it'll pull out there, and we'll have it. I strongly recommend you connecting with Jillian and following her story and being part of that community. If you want to be on this podcast, you know what to do, come and find me. If you want to recommend anybody on this podcast, you know what to do. Come and find me, reach out to me, varying channels if you want. But for now, Jillian, thanks so much. It's been great having you.
Thank you very much, Alexander, and thanks everybody for listening in. Thank you.